Right, our next episode involves an Australian senator, Senator Ralph Babet. Now, I'm not here to have a go at Ralphie boy. I actually kind of like the way he presents himself. It's kind of larrikinish. But I'm not here to have a go at Ralphie boy. He has a legal standing at which he is now making some statements, some very, very real statements on a world stage. Like this crumbling world is kind of like fracturing and allowing people to say certain things inside the parliament. And this time we're going to have a look at half an hour of Ralphie having a discussion.
One day in a few generations, children will be living a complete dystopian nightmare and we won't know how they got there. So do something about it now while you can. You know what? Get stuffed. We don't care what you say. Because right now we live in a country where people are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to be the nail that stands up because they know they're going to get hit with the hammer. The government is trying to restrict speech. Don't be quiet. Censorship is a very bad concept and it will only lead to misery. They've bent the knee, they've touched their toes to globalist interests. In my opinion, they can't stand you. They just want to step on the throat of the average everyday person and they're just pushing and pushing and pushing. You need to speak. If you just sit at home and you're quiet and you're silent, nothing will change and it will just keep getting worse. Always believe in yourself. I had a lot of people tell me that I couldn't do so many things in my life, and here I am today. I'm the Senator for Victoria in Australia in federal parliament.
Down with the beats, with the Ralphie boy in the intro, with the rhetoric. So he hits the nail on the head with all this rhetoric that's just going to excite the plebs. Oh, wards, vote for the Ralphie boy. Let's ignore what he's saying technically. But no, we're going to address very technically everything that he just read in that little intro with the boom, boom, little bit of doof doof there in the background for the Ralphie boy because he's hip with the new age. P.S. Did you see the news reporter he was hanging out with? Rebel without a cause on the stage.
When I was researching you, because I wanted to look up a bit about you before we interviewed you and before we met, a lot of the media articles were haranguing you for still working in your family's company of real estate.
Yes.
Why do you think the media hates people who work?
Oh, Ralphie boy, senators can't work. That's beneath them. That you can't work for those Reserve Bank currencies and be a senator, Ralphie boy. That would be being a burden on the state, and that would make you a pauper at law. And you can't be a senator if you're a pauper. Isn't that right, Ralphie boy? That might have something to do with Rebel Without a Cause hanging around your studio as well. They might know something about the people they preach to.
Well, I think Australia in general, we've gone so far left that we no longer appreciate entrepreneurial attitudes or people that want to work hard for a living. In all the media articles and whenever a reporter from mainstream news has asked me, I've always said, hey, look, guys, my Senate work is my main source of income, my main source of pride, my main source of excitement in life. That's what I love to do. And on the weekend, instead of sitting at home doing nothing, watching TV or watching sports or whatever it is, on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, what I like to do is I like to help out in the family business, and I like to go out and go to an open home, for example.
See, so because I'm a senator and I don't get to play with pleb money, I'm not allowed to answer this like a worker. Now, remember when Bill Shorten was caught in the parliament saying to all those school children that he hoped that the the working class would be able to afford a home? And that was Bill Shorten's slip-up. And your slip-up right now is answering this bloody question and demonstrating that you're of a different class to everyone else. You're not the working class. You only get to participate in the working class on the weekends, and you do that as a gift, right? A humanitarian gift to your family, right? Because your main pleasure is being a senator. Is that at the Crown's pleasure, Senator Babet? Would that be at some sort of royal prerogative, given a line of authority to have that pleasure, Senator?
And when I do that, I actually meet a lot of people, and people tell me, "Hey, aren't you that guy from the news? Aren't you that guy from social media? Did I see you the other day, or have I met you before?" I'm like, "Well, actually, I'm actually a senator for Victoria," and we get into a conversation. And what they tell me is that they're suffering. They are suffering under economic mismanagement because of the cost of living crisis that we're in right now. So people in Australia are suffering.
The smug look on your face looking down at all your wards of state right now. They tell me that they're suffering. I'm a little bit disconnected from it all because I got taken out of that world and I was returned to God. But I was told to take this oath under the peril of my life and not tell them about their wardship. And now I'm listening to them while I'm out and about on my weekends, gifting my working class.
Prices are up on everything because of inflation. They can't afford to pay their bills and they're struggling with their power prices, for example. And I actually get a really, really good feel for how people in my community are. So I think it's actually a benefit that I have a normal job, because if I have a normal job, of course, on the weekends, not during the times that Parliament is sitting and not when I'm supposed to do any parliamentary business.
It's quite amusing, isn't it, right off the word go? I'm not the working class. Just to be clear, I'm not the working class. Just to be clear, I only do that on the weekends. Just to be clear.
I get to talk to regular everyday people, and I get to act like a regular everyday person and really understand the pain points in our community right now. So what the media should actually be saying is, aren't we glad that Senator Babet has a normal job and he's out in the community and meeting people, instead of being in what we like to call the Canberra bubble and completely disconnected from the average person?
The Canberra bubble. The federal executive Canberra bubble. We saw what happened to Pauline, right? She went to jail because she tried to upset the Canberra bubble. Well, what they mean is that you're all wards of state. They live with a silver spoon. You're the ones supplying all of their wealth. Look at their media mocking you all the time. Look at Rebel Without a Cause mocking you all the time. And you're the working class, aka the poor, aka the pauper that we discussed in the Addressing the Government series. Now, if you want to look very clearly at what I'm talking about, please go and read the annotated Constitution by Quick and Garron and look for the word pauper or look for the word lunatic through that document. And it's going to very much describe this separation that Babet is trying not to allude to so openly while he's answering his masters. And holy crap, it's quite funny. Right off the bat. That's the first question. We've just got to get that grounding down. I'm not a pleb. I'm a patrician like everyone else. I just enjoy to be a pleb on the weekends.
Talking about disconnection and inflation, what is really driving inflation and what actionable steps could the government take, say, in the next 6 months to really mitigate what's going on at the moment?
Stop spending money.
That's simple. Perfect.
It's that
done.
simple. So to our government right now, which is the Labor Party in Australia, stop spending money. The more money you spend, the more you devalue the currency that's in circulation right now. It's not difficult. It's not hard to understand. If the government is going to continually devalue the currency by spending money that, in a lot of the cases, they don't have, what's going to happen is the money that's already in circulation is going to be worth less. And the only people who suffer from a devaluing currency, it's not corporations, it's not high net worth individuals, it's not the elite as such, it's people that are on a wage. Because people that are on a wage can only earn X amount of dollars per month or X amount of dollars per year. That's not changing anytime soon. They can't just, put up their prices as such, right? They can't collect more income from the system. They can't do that. They're on a wage. So inflation, what I like to say, is a hidden tax on the public.
A hidden tax on the public. Now, you can't be a member of the public. Anderson versus Commonwealth 1925. Anderson tried to be a member of the public and was denied. He was denied because he had no title of office to sit in the government. He was a member of the private. So what Babet is talking about is you as the poor relying on a Reserve Bank currency or handout at which the government has to pay back later. This is why he's talking about it always being in a debt, right? He's not willing to tell you the absolute truth. He's lying to you in a manipulative way, and he knows full well what he's doing with his Clive Palmer book on the table.
And the government, when they spend money, yeah, sure, it looks good. It might help you win any election. It might help you in the polls. But what it's really doing is it's disadvantaging the average Australian. If the government wants to help people, if they really want to help the disadvantaged or anything like this, the answer is not spending more money. The answer is removing red tape, removing regulations, and allowing people to go out there and work and create a life for themselves. That's the answer, not just spending cash, because spending cash is not the answer.
The government can't make your slavery any more slavery. That would be breaching upon United Nations laws. So we have to be careful about what we say here, about how we spend money and whose problem it is to actually pay it back, right? And we sold the children into the debt. So who's the poor here, and who needs a leg up to have some sort of lifestyle because they use a Reserve Bank currency in the first place instead of the gold and silver that's listed under Section 115 of the very Constitution these people proclaim to operate under?
Some of the biggest leaks when it comes to financially what the government are doing at the moment?
Biggest what?
The biggest leaks. Like, where are they spending the most money?
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Australia, so it's a Kiwi accent. It's a Kiwi accent. That's going to go viral. The biggest problem right now, I think, is in our country, in Australia, is the NDIS scheme. So the NDIS stands for the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It is full of leaks. It costs us billions of dollars a year. I'll give an idea of what it's like. So the NDIS, the whole idea is to help people that are disadvantaged, that need help. But what the NDIS has ended up being is a haven for fraudsters. Let's say you have a disability, as an example. The government will pay for you to access services that you might need, which is fair enough. I agree with it. I think it's great in concept. Let's say you need remedial massage. Just say you have a back issue. If you go in and you say, look, I've got a back issue. I'm here on the NDIS scheme. I need help from the government. They'll say, you're on the NDIS? Sure, $300, as an example, right? So these aren't real numbers, as an example. But let's say you walked in there yourself and you're paying cash as a regular punter. They'll say $150. So the NDIS is just a way for people to fraud the system. Unfortunately, it's not the people that need the services itself. It's the people that are providing the services that are taking advantage. Because the NDIS is, frankly, a very, very messy system, and it's not been thought out very well. So that's probably the biggest leakage at the moment in one of the biggest leakages at the moment in government.
I don't even want to get started on how you treat disabled people. You are a absolute fucking disgrace. The way I have been treated since I rolled my car is an absolute beyond joke. The lack of support that you and your systems of government give in any way, shape or form is an absolute disgrace. Now, I could speak about working for government and the absolute disgrace that was. Okay? So we haven't even started yet, Senator Babet. You bring up NDIS. We'll go back further. What is the Commonwealth Employment Service? And why was all of that privatised? Let's go into the initial privatisation of the entire job network. Let's look at that. for a scam, for instance? What do you do with wards of state? And why did all the churches jump on the employment bandwagon, Mr. Babet? Why did you open your speech talking about the working class? And why would all those churches jump in on those paupers, Mr. Babet? This is the legal conundrum that you're finding yourselves in, Mr. Babet, as it all comes unravelling and has been defined on the Supreme Court record. And I don't think half of you realise what that definition means in the grand scheme of all things. What is the Social Security Services Department? And what is human services? What was that cretin Christian Porter overseeing as human services minister, Mr. Babet? What's the difference between social services and human services, Mr. Babet? Can we define all of these things before all of the people, seeing as you've already opened your mouth on the matter? This is something that directly affected me. You harmed me in unknown, innumerable ways, and I'd like fucking answers. And I don't swear because I'd like fucking answers.
Do you think the COVID policies and the COVID spending and borrowing had a lot to do with the current inflation rate?
Definitely. I mean, our government now in Australia is in about $1 trillion of debt, approximately, something like this. That $1 trillion was spent on all sorts of things during the COVID lockdown. What they should have done is they should have looked at countries like Sweden, for example, that didn't lock down, or states like Florida that did kind of lock down initially. But then when the data came out and the data showed that, hey, these lockdowns are counterproductive, it's not really working, they changed their direction. That's what they should have done. Looked internationally and said, what's working overseas? What can we do here in Australia that is going to be beneficial for our country based off best practice overseas? But they didn't do that. And now we're saddled with, $1 trillion of debt in Australia. And who's going to pay it off? The average everyday punter is going to pay it off through their taxes. It's not right. It's an example of government overreach, and we need to put an end to it.
Who's going to pay it off? Not them, not the patricians, not the ones using the real coin that's in the Constitution. The taxpayer, the borrower, the pauper, the one that's needy of the government. They're the ones that are going to pay it all off. And when we talk about what he's actually talking about, we talk about a foreign curial power defined on the Supreme Court record at which he took an oath to, at which he's sitting in front of the flags of right now. And the Supreme Court record defined very clearly what was considered a Rule 90 offence, torture, which lockdowns and keeping you in your homes is considered to be, because it is considered to be a mental impression on you or oppression of you, in that you're locked down in a place you can't leave and under the force of someone else, not at your own free will. And taking your free will away from you in that manner and locking you down by the force of a gun. They shot at an old man in Victoria. They used a weapon and shot at an old man. They attacked someone on a war memorial, which led to a court case in the very first place. So, Senator Babet, I'd be very careful about where you go right now, because legally there are already things that are put down in play that could see your very words used against you. All right. What is a Rule 92 international humanitarian law offence when it is very clear on the New South Wales court record what a curial power is defined as?
You mentioned earlier that you were an immigrant when I was listening to you and being interviewed by somebody else. What was your immigration story? How did that play out with you and your family? Yeah,
so my parents came here from a small island called Rodrigues. They came to Australia for a better life. Rodrigues is a beautiful country. It's a fantastic place to live, but it is a small island. So they came here to give more opportunities for their kids, and opportunities obviously I have had. I absolutely love Australia. I think Australia is a beautiful country, and I've travelled a lot across the world as well. And every time I come back home, I always think how lucky I am to live in a country like Australia, because in Australia, there is nothing stopping you from achieving whatever you want to do. You can be a troll on Twitter, you can be an actor, you can be a politician like me, you can own a small business, you can own a large business. Nothing at all is stopping. It just comes down to how hard you want to work and how much effort you want to put in. That's why I love Australia so much. I'm very blessed to be here. And I think the issue with Australia right now, and possibly many other Western countries, is people don't appreciate what they have because they haven't traveled outside of their borders to see how other people in less fortunate countries live. And I think in the West right now, we've got a lot of naysayers, a lot of people, especially in our educational institutions, that are talking crap about our respective countries and not really appreciating how good we have it here. So to those people, I say, knock it off. If you go overseas and you see how some other people live, you would be more appreciative of what we have here in our respective homes.
This is so scripted, it's not funny. Welcome to Australia from your foreign country. I came from a foreign land as well, but it was the Crown. So slightly different in that I have a line of authority here, and you never had that line of authority, but you are welcome to this land at the pleasure of the Crown. So welcome at the pleasure of the Crown. Which Crown? Senator Babet. Now you have this statement of opportunity. Well, you destroyed mine. I used to work for the government, Senator Babet. I was a competent IT professional. I had my name on the door and I worked in a server room, Senator Babet. And your Australian government not only committed a whole bunch of criminal offences along the way, but it directly attempted to destroy me and my career for outing the truth, Senator Babet. The truth on the table, Senator Babet. A truth that is now defined on the courtroom record 15 years later, Senator Babet. 15 years after you destroyed my entire livelihood, Senator Babet, as the Australian government, on purpose, Senator Babet. That truth is now on the New South Wales Supreme Court record, Senator Babet. So let's talk about the opportunities that you were given as versus the opportunities that were taken away from me by a bunch of war criminals that sit beside you, Senator Babet. And now we have you talking like a patrician and separating yourself from the working class at the beginning of this video, Senator Babet. So is it your kind that destroy our opportunities, Senator Babet?
You spoke earlier about communism. Can you describe your interpretation of communism?
Look, communism is an overbearing government that controls the means of production. That's what it really is, right? And I think when you take away individual liberties, when you
Look at the flag behind you. Look at the flag behind you and ask yourself what the Flags Act 1954 is. And ask yourself what lowering the Admiralty ensign on the 1st of March 1967 might mean. And ask yourself why that would happen. And ask yourself what the fuck a St Edward's crown is. And ask yourself why the Anzac were under an imperial crown. And ask yourself what communism is if this government's tied to Nazis and this debacle in Ukraine that we entertained in the last 4 videos.
Take away an individual's ability to create and to have ownership over what they make, then what you're really saying is that, you want to crush the human spirit. You want to crush the human soul. You want to take away what it means to be a person. And, obviously, I'm not a fan of communism. I don't think anyone should be, because we've got to keep in mind that communism, as we know in the 20th century, has resulted in the deaths of approximately, by some accounts, of 100 million people.
What it means to be a human. What it means to be a person. Killing all those men in Ukraine. A man of the Senate talking to all the wards or paupers as if they were their persons, not like they were men who had a person to hold some sort of title agreements with the state. Again, we see a very separate ideology from this man while he sits there from his patriarchal sort of view talking about the working class or the plebeians.
Communism sounds great in a textbook, but communism in practice really means authoritarian governments. It means prison camps. It means death. It means you're not going to be able to feed your children. It means suffering. That's what he really, really means. And not just communism, socialism as well.
He just described every state in Australia. What's a Queensland wellness camp, Senator Babet? What were all those COVID detention centres for? What's an immigration detention centre? What's a super jail? How many of these things have you built on this land, Senator? What are you actually alluding to, and what are you preparing for?
Socialism is, for lack of a better word, the cousin to communism. All of these things that I dislike about communism, in socialism, it is just communism light. So I like to push back against both of those ways of thinking.
Do you see aspects of Marxist socialism coming into play here in Australian politics and in some of the policies they're trying to introduce?
Absolutely, absolutely. With all the culture war stuff that we're seeing right now in our country, where they, really going after, the culture of the youth, we're seeing a lot of that today.
Like this same governing power did in Nazi Germany in around 1939, 1940.
And I think Australians, because we've had it so good for so long, we don't really recognise or possibly want to recognise what's happening in our culture. But I think the important thing is that the Australian people realise that there are nefarious actors in our institutions at the moment that would like our nations to go in a different direction than what they're going at the moment. And that direction will not lead to a good place over time. What we need to do is we need to rediscover a love of country.
How do you do that when you fly the flag of a foreign curial power? How do you love your country when you're the curial power that undermined the Aboriginal sovereignty and are now using that Aboriginal sovereignty to undermine white Australia? How do you do that from your foreign position when you are neither sovereign Aboriginal or sovereign constitutional and therefore don't technically have that legal right? How do you technically go back to country when you sit in front of a flag foreign to this actual country, Senator Babet? And this is the reality that we have to come to. You're talking about the working class using your Reserve Bank notes and not telling them about their constitutional duties under the Section 115 of the Constitution, Senator Babet. And you're a senator under oath to what?
We need to rediscover a love of individual freedoms and rights. And we need to say to the government that, we are free and sovereign people.
This is where the bullshit stops, Senator Babet. Kiskonan versus New South Wales 2021. I want you to define very, very clearly what you mean by free and sovereign people. Where does sovereignty come from, and why are you saying that now in the middle of undermining the people's sovereignty with the voice?
And we want to live our lives how we want to live our lives, and we want you to stay out of it as much as possible. There will always be a place for government, of course. You need government, but government should be as small as possible and as weak as possible to get as much done as they can, but at the same time staying small so that they don't overreach into people's lives.
People now, not humans, not persons, people's lives, not like his. So you don't want to jump into our lives. We're not a burden on the state, are we, Mr. Babet? We know that they're wards of state, right? And we want to give the wards as much freedom as we can while we enslave them. with all of the state slavery. It's not the federal responsibility, that it's the states that are slaving them, Senator, and you won't address that state slavery. What state are you a senator for? I know that I've got 2 One Nation senators that won't speak for me as a resident of Queensland, Senator. So are you speaking for your residents, or are you speaking only for the Patricians? We get back to this court case, Senator, and we're going to address it. So I've got you now openly on audio, very clearly defining your position.
Who are the people that are driving this idea of Marxist socialism, communism in Australia? Do you think it's idealistic people that have come up through the academic sector?
Idiots. I think it's absolute idiots. It's people that have never opened a history book. That's what it is. It's people that have no understanding of what's happened, 60, 70 years ago and how things really could be today. It's kids. It's kids mostly that have grown up in a safe nation, that have come up through the ranks and have never experienced what life was like in some of these European countries where we've seen communism and socialism really, really take hold. It's just people that refuse to understand history.
So, Senator Babet, why is there a shrine of remembrance in Melbourne? Why is there a stone of remembrance centred in that shrine? Why does a North Line come out of that stone? Why is it featured in the King's Domain? What happened in Imperial Conference 1926? What happened in Statute of Westminster 1931? And who the fuck do you work for? It's a very real question, Senator Babet. You said 70 years ago we should realise that Nazis took over our country and rewrote our education under the Treaty 1939. We should be called kiddies because we recognise who the fuck you work for and what the fuck you've done in this country with your Reserve Bank currency and the demise of this currency and the undermining of all the mines, forests, fisheries and agriculture in what we call an administration under the rules of usufruct. And the problem here is that as administrators, you went outside of those rules, Senator Babet, and you created heinous criminal offences that are recorded on the New South Wales Supreme Court record. And you can't escape this stuff, Senator Babet. So I'd be very careful about the words you've already used that have already outed you for the manipulating man that you are when you talk to the working class like they're a separate class to you.
I am a student of history. I understand what's happened previously, and I understand where we're heading as a people if we keep going down the path that we're going down now. If more people open history books, we wouldn't be experiencing what we're experiencing right now. And it's a shame that we're in the position that we're in now where people like me have to stand up and, fight for what I think are very simple things, but that other people just refuse to comprehend and understand.
I find it very hard that you even know your history, Senator Babet. You're sitting in front of a flag that caused the monetary problems here with a Reserve Bank currency, a Reserve Bank currency that was put into play when? In 1965 Currency Act. And then what happened? A lowering of an Admiralty ensign and then the replacement of the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia with the Great Seal of Australia. And here you are sitting in front of a flag under an oath to a foreign stone talking about sovereignty when already on the Supreme Court record, we define the separation in these curial powers at international law. And I'm sure that's why you're sitting here playing this game as a senator who at the beginning really, really, really defined his separation from that poor people, the working class.
You have a vote coming up soon for something called The Voice. Can you explain to Kiwi listeners what The Voice means?
No one knows what The Voice means because not even the Prime Minister of our nation knows what The Voice means. But,
a senator from the Australian government telling you no one knows what The Voice means when Stephen, sitting here, telling you in this voice right now, telling you exactly what the voice means. It's an undermining of the line of authority in your Anzac to your constitution, and they are using the loss of sovereignty of the Aborigine to cause the loss of sovereignty of the constitutional Australian. Aboriginal sovereignty is not constitutional sovereignty. Constitutional sovereignty, aka the Imperial Crown, and the Aborigine lived side by side together until a St. Edward's Crown started manipulating their land and their monetary supplies.
Essentially what it is the government wants to create a voice for Indigenous people in Australia. That voice will have the ability to influence government decisions. So as an example, if there is a piece of legislation that's coming up through the Parliament that's going to affect Indigenous people, which, let's be honest, it's absolutely everything affects Indigenous people because they're people just like everyone else, then this voice will have a say on what happens, right? And what we know from what's happened already with everything else, this voice is obviously going to be infiltrated by left-wing activists. And these left-wing activists will have a direct say without being elected officials in what happens in our nation. Look,
it is so much worse than this when you look at what happened with the Federal Executive Council closing the Prime Minister's Department and the Office of the Cabinet's Department in 1971, and merging the two of them together into Prime Minister and Cabinet, and giving rise to the Federal Executive Council to replace the position of the Cabinet in 1971, and now they want to give the voice a direct voice into the executive branch of the government that they manipulated and took over in 1971 before kicking Gough Whitlam out. And it is becoming very apparent that Senator Babet is choosing a side here. Senator, are you choosing the side of the war criminal? Because the law will not stop in consideration of your criminal offences as a government, even as executive branch governance. And it's not our executive branch government, is it, Senator Babet? It's the executive branch government of a foreign curial power defined on New South Wales court record, Kiskanen versus New South Wales 2021.
The voice is a very, very messy thing. I think all we need to know about the voice is that the voice divides our nation by race, because it says if you've got brown skin.
You have an Australian senator agreeing and admitting that the crime of apartheid has already taken place. This is a crime under the Criminal Code 1995. You will find it in Volume 2, Senator Babet. Why is the Australian Federal Police still sitting on its arse? And why is not Lydia behind bars already?
You can have a say outside of what everyone else can in our democratic process. And that's all you really need to know about it. It divides us by race. It divides us by colour of skin. I think it was Martin Luther King who said, don't judge me on the colour of my skin, judge on the content of character. That's what he said. And I think we need to stick to that. We need to reject the voice and say, you know what? We don't need any detail. We don't need to know anything else. All we need to know is that we're all one people. We're all green and gold. We're all Australians. We all have.
And now what I'm telling you, Senator, is that you're obligated to the Criminal Code 1995 Volume 2. And if you really wholly believe this, then you need to report immediately to the AFP that crimes of apartheid have actually occurred, under your own words, actually displayed here in audio and video. I mean, it's very clear that a criminal offence has occurred, and Albo is party to this criminal offence, and Lydia is also party to this criminal offence. So when do we, as a people, see you uphold the law, Senator Babet?
our say at the election every 3 years and that's it. We're not going to divide on the colour of skin. That's that.
In New Zealand, they've introduced a similar concept with co-governance, but they're implementing it in different ways. So rather than having it as one overall concept, they're doing it kind of strategically in individual sectors. And part of that has meant recently our health system now prioritises people based on a points-based system. Yeah, where if you're Māori or Pacifica, you can get certain points and then get surgeries ahead of other people rather than based on need. And it's caused a real uproar with people realising this is racially divisive. They say it's to solve historic inequality problems. Where do you see the options that could actually help solve true inequality without turning back to originally racist policies?
Look,
So New Zealand are already party to an international criminal offence called apartheid by segregating by race and treating one race over another, which is the definition of apartheid. And you can ask me about that if you'd like. I grew up in apartheid in South Africa, so we could discuss this, Senator Babet. You seem to have this arrogance and notion of falsity in you, and it streaks and shines through like shit.
The best way to solve the problem of inequality is not things like The Voice. The best way to solve that is by reducing regulation and having a good educational system. That's how you do it. You say to people, look, education is important. We want all of you to go through the process of learning, but not just, we're not going to teach you what to learn. We're going to show you how to learn. We're going to show you how to be an entrepreneur. We're going to show you how to be an individual. We're going to show you how to better your life through that system. So giving people the opportunity of education, that's how you really help people. And then on the other side, you reduce regulation, you reduce red tape, and you allow people to create a life for themselves that they envision.
I don't know what to say. The arrogance is outstanding here. Coming from a knowledged position, Senator, your arrogance is just outstanding. So we need to indoctrinate these people. We need better state wards because we need to put them into the workforce, don't we? They don't need to pay off that national debt that you create while they are individual taxpayers. Divide you all. So your modus operandi is to divide them all from their families, treat them like wards of the state, make them individual taxpayers, keep them divided, keep them deluded, because we're talking about a delusion here already defined on the Supreme Court record, Senator. And here you are upholding that delusion on purpose, Senator. You're lying to the people and conning the people into believing that they should be good plebs, when at the beginning of this video you clearly demonstrated your separation from that as a patrician.
That's how you really help people.
New Zealand's previous health director was a guy called Ashley Bloomfield. He's now been knighted due to his courageous service during the COVID pandemic. He's now working with the World Health Organization on the pandemic treaty.
Foreign imperial power, knighthood. What kind of knighthood? A Jesuit knighthood or something British? Because certainly not Australian. Foreign imperial power working with the World Health Organization, a foreign body that's known to be very suspect in relation to a bio-warfare incident, Senator Babet.
Are you concerned about the pandemic treaty from the WHO and how they could take individual sovereignty off Australia?
I am concerned, actually. Yeah, it's actually a very concerning thing. The Australian government, without a pandemic treaty, followed basically to the letter what the World Health Organization asks them to follow.
Psst, the flag behind you is not a sovereign flag, Senator. It's not linked to the King's domain. Psst.
And obviously to disastrous effect, because in our nation we had lockdowns for years. We had, and we still have, people unable to work because of vaccine mandates and things like that.
Psst, Senator. That's an international war crime under Rule 92 of the International Humanitarian Law. It's called forced medical procedure.
We lost a lot of our freedoms and our rights. People were locked in their homes. Pregnant women were getting arrested because they made Facebook posts organising protests and things like this. So
Psst, Senator, there's international humanitarian law offence Rule 90. I believe right of family in The Hague too. And I believe war crime by state police.
World Health Organization, I believe, is a dangerous organization, in my personal belief. And the reason why I think they're dangerous is because, like you said, they take away our sovereignty.
Right, this is where we get back to serious, Mr. Babet. What sovereignty do you have if the Supreme Court of New South Wales has defined your curial power as being an occupying curial power and an administrator under rules of usufruct, and therefore not the sovereign power at which you administer? This is a very clear reality that you need to now realise that we know, Senator Babet, as we clearly demonstrate to you that you're mocking the people. And this is a farce, everybody. This is a gluttonous and arrogant man sitting there as if he is separated from all of you, the working class. And it's a very clear mockery of this Australian system, given that it is an occupying administrating power under Hague Conventions and has no sovereignty here. It usurped the sovereignty of the people through executive branch government, at which it's trying to usurp again. So it's very clear that Senator Babet is a mouthpiece that's been put there, scripted on purpose. This is what it seems, and all of these answers are just are laughable. They are very, very laughable answers, like they are the most scripted answers that one could have given in, I guess, some kind of soap opera.
They take away our ability as Australians to make our own decisions about our own health policy. And it's not just the World Health Organization, it's the United Nations as well. It's the World Economic Forum. These unelected globalist bodies are making decisions for our nations without us having a real input into those decisions. So I would actually push back very strongly against the WHO, the WEF, the UN, and all the other sister organizations and say, hey, you know what? Get stuffed.
Please explain your oath of allegiance and the very technical links to where it's founded and forged and who you serve, where everything is linked, and why you serve the United Nations today, whether you like it or not, and why you serve the WEF Masters today from your oathed position, whether you like it or not. Can you explain to everyone why Gough Whitlam was ousted from that executive branch in 1975?
We don't care what you say. Yes, we'll have us at the table and we'll listen, but you're not going to tell us what to do in our nations because our sovereignty is important. At the end of the day, all of our nations, be it New Zealand or Australia or Canada or America, whatever, we need to make decisions that are best for us. These unelected globalist bodies cannot tell us what we can and can't do. Yeah, we can sit at the table, that's fine, but at the end of the day, the decision has to be ours.
So please explain to the people how that decision's going to be made with someone else's money. I'd like you to explain to them this whole entire reserve bank. I'd like you to explain the monetary supply. I'd like you to explain the citizenship papers that they boarded a foreign curial power with. I'd like you to explain to them why they're being treated as the working class. I'd like you to explain what a pauper is at law, and I'd like you to explain what it defines in the Constitution as to why they are being treated the way they are, Senator Babet. Reality has come to a crunch point where you've now hit the knowledgeable people in our society, and we ain't going to put up with these criminal actions going on in our parliament any longer. You have committed heinous international war crimes across the board, and it can be well demonstrated in your own words in this audio that you are complicit in those actions, Senator Babet, for not speaking up against those very criminal actions that have occurred, including the apartheid that you have defined in this very video, Senator Babet. If you wholeheartedly believe that, then you should get on the phone to the AFP and make a report that a criminal offence has occurred called a war crime or a crime against humanity, Senator Babet. Are you willing to go that far? Because I've now got you on video telling me that this was all about race and colour.
New Zealand's wanting to introduce a social media regulator. I know they're wanting to do a similar bill here in Australia. They've already done one in Canada, wanting to introduce one in Ireland and the UK. How do you think having a social media regulator could impact people such as yourself being able to freely and actively campaign on social platforms or on the internet in general?
Yeah, look.
So why are all those Imperial Crown countries affected, Senator? And why are you sitting in front of a blue ensign that's making that effect on that Imperial Crown, Senator?
We shouldn't be regulating anything. I'll give an example. If it's legal and lawful to say, if you're not calling for violence, for example, as an example, the government should not be stepping in and saying you can't say it, right? The governments of all of our, this goes back to what I said before about the unelected global bodies. All of these suggestions come from these unelected global bodies. That's why Australia is going down the same path as what New Zealand is right now, because the orders come from up here.
The orders come from up where, Senator? Instead of the prerogative right of the Imperial Crown of Australia, they come from where, Senator?
These bodies obviously want to control our individual nations. The government will say disinformation, misinformation, etc., it's harmful. And I would agree in some cases it can be harmful. But I would also argue that the answer to mis or disinformation is not government censorship. The answer is more freedom and more free speech, because the best disinfectant for incorrect speech is the truth. And the only way you're going to come to the truth is if you allow people to have a public debate, and then naturally the best ideas or the right things will rise to the surface. If you restrict people's ability to speak, if you stop them from saying what they think and feel, right or wrong, what's going to happen is that's going to fester and that's going to bubble up. And then what we're going to see is potentially increases in violence and things of that nature, because you send ideas and things underground. As an example, racism, or let's go fully extreme, let's say full extreme Nazi ideology. No sane person would say that the ideology of the Nazis is a good thing. But if you ban it, if you say this ideology is now not allowed to be discussed, what happens then is instead of being talked about in an open forum, it goes underground. It's underground, it's allowed to fester, it gets worse, and that could explode. Whereas if you have that in the public sphere, in the public domain, freely able to be discussed, people will provide better ideas to that. They'll say, it's not okay to be a racist. These are some better ideas. We're all one people. We're all part of the human family, etc. And it will extinguish those bad ideas pretty quickly. So I think that the whole concept of censorship overall is a very bad concept, and it will only lead to misery in our nation.
There's some Freemasonry handy things going on there, Babet. I was a bit perturbed there trying to listen and watch at the same time. It kind of looked like some secrety signals going on there. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, totally wrong. All right, everyone. I'm going to have to break this one in half. This man said so much bullshit, it's not funny. And it's very clear that he's been caught out at quite a few things right from the get-go when he started talking about how he was separate from all of you, the working class, from his Senator Patrician seat. And all we have to do is look at how Pauline Hanson was treated. Remember how Pauline went to jail because she tried to out these people for what they were? And then she became one of them and wore a burqa in the Parliament and entertained the plebs with the clown show that they all like to script for you so that you never know what's going on. Right? This is what Senator Babet's doing right now. He's scripting this for you so you don't know what's going on. This is the bottom line. He probably won't address half the questions that have been put in front of him. But what I'm a bit perturbed about is how Nazi extremism is coming from the mouth of someone linked to Nazis. Like directly linked to papists who are linked to the Nazis from 1939. I mean, we're talking about Menzies model people like John Howard that totally disarmed you. We're talking like Jesuits like Tony Abbott that declared war in Syria and fucked over Afghanistan. We're talking about the same sorts of people that disarmed the American army and sent them home from Afghanistan and gave all those weapons to the Taliban that they've been fighting for 20 years. We're talking about a total world script here so that you just keep remaining dumb. And that's what they want. That's totally what they want. This is why it looks like a total script, but most of the people in Australia are so fluoridated up, they're going to look at this and just soak it up. Soak it up like it's normal for the clown show to be like this. Well, it's not, Senator Babet. There's law on the table now, and you've clearly opened your mouth too much and clearly been caught out at those laws, and you're only helping us, right? Because we ain't going to put up with war criminals in our parliament anymore, like Nazis, or those that sympathise with Nazis by taking oaths of allegiance linked to things like WEF powers. Right? Those sorts of powers that you openly admit created race problems and apartheid problems in this country, as well as mandate problems in this country. They're all criminal offences, Senator Babet. Criminal offences that we're no longer going to put up with. You think we, the Australian Imperial Crown, should be stood all over by you, a bunch of war criminals that sit here in the media and act like patricians over a bunch of plebs? Because the very beginning of this video is you wholeheartedly separating yourself from the working class for the government. You're not doing that for the benefit of the people. You're doing that for the benefit of the government and your money masters to demonstrate that you're allowed to sit in the Senate. You're not a pauper, are you? You're the one holding a little bit of gold coin, not to be a pauper, not to rely on all of this Reserve Bank currency that this working class is going to be paid with as the only option to be paid with the working class money. We call it pauper money, right? Don't pay them in their valued silver, which they are lost at holy seas, right? So you get to rape all of that gold and silver, don't you? You get to rape all of their estates while they remain plebeians to your patricianhood. And this is the bottom line, Senator. This is what you've been caught out doing. And it's no wonder why Clive Palmer would send you in to talk like this kind of idiot, right? We all know that Clive's a papist. Mr. Red Shoes and his other papist mates all running around trying to run mining. Oh, you can't use that mining stuff anymore, Mr. Papist. The WEF masters have taken control of your mine. And Clive's like, oh, stampy my feet. Oh, I need to be in the usufruct. Well, I've got to say this to you, Babet. It belongs to the Commonwealth of Australia, at which you're an administering power who have committed heinous international criminal offences and therefore also seen the naked owner return to the usufruct and demonstrate that they're home and at law, Senator, you know, according to the very law that I read out in the last few videos, we'd like our money back. And we'd like the performance of all that money since the time you defrauded us out of it. In a usurpation of this sovereignty and a total lie of sovereignty since that cretin John Howard disarmed the population. So on top of that, in the failure of your national security by Soldier X and your Governor-General and your New South Wales Police Commissioner and all this other failed command that I keep pointing out, in lieu of all of that, why don't you give us some sort of command to defend our country? Because this is what you're setting us up for, Senator. And we're wholly watching you do it. And we're wholly documenting the legislative problem that you've caused. And we're wholly pointing out to you as a senator the criminal actions as the people that are sitting around you, if not you yourself, Senator. So I think it's about time you rang the AFP. I think it's about time the AFP got involved. I think it's about time that this was all put out on the table. Justice Lonergan didn't put all of these things on the Supreme Court record for senators to ignore them, for senators to ignore what was defined by the Supreme Court in this country, Senator Babet. And you want to continue to ignore what justices of Supreme Court have put down for people like you, the senators. Stop acting like patricians over the working class and pull your finger out and ring the AFP and start making those arrests, Senator Babet. This is kind of where we come to, that you keep having all of these criminal offences documented against you. Right, documented against you. And Pauline, we've given you ample opportunity to say something, do something. And it's very clear now that we come from a standing of law, and it's very clear that you're using all of these patricians in your government there. What did he call it? The Canberra Circle, the bubble in Canberra, right? You obviously bubbled yourself so much you have to protect yourselves from the working class, Pauline. And that's very demonstrative. Can't let the working class know that you're an occupying power treating them as slaves. Technical real slaves, where you, in the criminal code, decided to go and change the way slavery works. Right? And it doesn't change on an international stage, Pauline. And then you want to go and repeal things like the Slave Trade Act, and then that doesn't change on an international stage, Pauline. You're still a bunch of war criminals at international law, and it is already defined on a Supreme Court record that the New South Wales Police Commissioner and her police force are a bunch of war criminals. This involves the New South Wales Magistrates Court, Senator Babet, and we ain't going to shut up anymore. This is why you got a real problem in that many people now know that you're a bunch of criminals and you've been caught wholly out at your game, and the curial right is defined on the Supreme Court record whether you like it or not, Senator Babet. And if you want to continue this rhetoric instead of addressing the law and the international law that sits before you, as Jesus said, Senator, we came not to break the law, we came to fulfill it. And we've discovered that the nanny in the house has been the one breaking the law and doing it in a very serious way that would include hanging from the neck until dead, Senator. Actual hanging from the neck until dead, Senator. And we wholly wish that all war criminals would hang from the neck until dead, Senator. It is our right, it is our duty, Senator, to make sure that these things occur so that our children and our future generations don't have to put up with the likes of war criminals and their bloodlines in our future. And you talk about the incitement of violence. These are the repercussions of the criminal offences that you as a government have committed. And that is the unfortunate truth, Senator. Now, to everyone else, this is going to have to be broken into two. This was a 35-minute video that I thought would be able to nail on the head very quickly. But Senator Babet, we will call him Senator Babble, babbled too much, and there was too much to respond to in relation to a mind fuckery that he is trying to push out upon all of you. And I ask you all to go to the very, very beginning of this video and re-watch that first 10 minutes where he smugly acts like he is totally separate to you, the working class. And you will see very, very, very clearly that this man is an actual con man.